My name is Liora Brennan, 38 years old. I remind myself of that, not the years, but the sense of ownership over my own life. Every time my family's expectations start to tighten around my ribs like a corset I never agreed to wear. The Brennan family has always been polished, successful, curated, a brand as much as a bloodline, and for years I've played my part. The peacekeeper, the soft voice, smoothing sharp edges, the one who keeps the machine running without squeaking too loudly. But nothing in the Brennan family machine ever prepared me for the moment they decided my daughter was not photogenic enough to be in our own family pictures. My daughter Meadow is the light in every shadowed room of my life. 12 years old, auburn hair that catches the sun like burning copper, and a spirit that refuses to dim. She was born with spina bifida, and she has used a wheelchair since she was 3, but if you ask her, she'll tell you she doesn't use a wheelchair. She pilots Violet, her purple chariot. She decorates Violet for every occasion. LED lights for holidays, crystals for birthdays, spoke covers with glitter and family photos she laminates herself. To Meadow, Violet isn't medical equipment. It's expression, identity, freedom. Her art teacher, Mrs. Pensky, once told me Meadow could capture emotions in sketches that adults struggle to articulate. Our fridge at home is a gallery of her joy. Watercolors of our neighborhood gardens, charcoal portraits of friends, even a dramatic ink illustration of our chaotic cat, Whiskers. But in my family, in the Brennan dynasty of image, perfection, and curated appearances, Meadow is loved conditionally. They love her despite the chair. They include her when it's convenient. They brag about her accomplishments with surprise, as if they still can't comprehend that a child in a wheelchair might win an art contest or make the honor roll. And 2 weeks before the reunion, the hints began. Tamara, my sister, texted, "Maybe keep Meadow's chair decoration simple this year. Roland's boss will be there." Then my mother, Francine, called. "Does Meadow really need the wheelchair for all the photos?" She asked it like someone asking whether a child really needs their favorite stuffed toy, as if the chair were optional, as if her mobility were a preference rather than her reality. I should have pushed back harder. Maybe part of me didn't want to believe they meant what they implied. Maybe part of me thought showing up with smiles and boundaries would be enough. The Brennan reunion happens every 5 years at the lake house my mother inherited from her father, a sprawling property with wraparound porches, a private dock, and a lawn so meticulously groomed it looks artificial. It's the kind of place that appears on postcards, where everything feels staged, curated, and ready for a glossy magazine spread. This year's reunion was high stakes. Roland had invited his boss, Mr. Hutchinson, and his family. Tamara planned to use the event for real estate branding content. My mother hired a professional photographer who normally shoots political families and high-end weddings. Meadow was simply excited to be included. She marked the reunion date with purple hearts on her calendar. She picked out a purple dress with silver threading that shimmered when she moved. We spent 2 evenings choosing crystals to glue onto Violet's wheel covers to match her outfit, and she spent hours making a new sketchbook labeled Brennan Family Memories 2024. "Mom," she asked the night before we left, "do you think Grandma will let me be in the front row this year? Since I'm shorter, I could be in the middle. It would make the picture balanced." She was so hopeful in a way only children can be, innocent to the possibility of cruelty, trusting that adults will treat them with dignity. I told her yes. I told her they would absolutely want her in the front. I wanted to believe it. The 6-hour drive from Ohio to Michigan was filled with Meadow's humming. She spent most of the ride drawing what she imagined the weekend would look like. Cousins playing at the lake, family gathered around the long dining table, even a sketch of Grandma Francine with a warm smile. That last drawing would end up being the one that hurt the most. We pulled into the gravel driveway behind a line of glossy cars. Roland's BMW, Tamara's Escalade, several Audis and Mercedes belonging to cousins already inside. Our humble Honda Civic looked like an uninvited guest. But Meadow squealed with excitement. "Look, Mom, new garden sculptures." Francine greeted us on the porch in a cream pantsuit. She smiled, polished, rehearsed, but the smile faltered when she saw Violet's decorations. The LED lights caught the afternoon sun in a dazzling way that, apparently, did not match her vision of professional. "Oh, Liora," she sighed. 2 words, 2 syllables. A world of disapproval. Before I could reply, Meadow wheeled forward, eyes bright. "Grandma, I made you something." She held out a small canvas, a delicate painting of the lake house she'd worked on for weeks. Francine took it like someone handling a fragile insect, murmured, "How thoughtful," and immediately set it behind a large vase where it disappeared. Roland arrived next. His cologne hit before his voice. "Liora, you made it!" Then, seeing Meadow, "And our little artist is here too." The way he said little artist made Meadow beam. The way he avoided looking at Violet made my stomach pinch. Inside, preparations were already underway. Harrison, the photographer, wore all black despite the humidity. His assistants set up reflectors, lighting, and tripods along the lawn with military precision. There was a shot list, 67 planned photos. My mother had typed them up herself. Group shots, generational shots, kids-only shots, sibling shots, cousins, grandparents. Meadow belonged in every single one, but the atmosphere told me she might not appear in any. At 2 p.m., the photos began. Family gathered on the lawn in coordinated colors, navy, cream, gold. Meadow looked radiant in her purple dress. Different, yes, but beautifully so. Roland pulled me aside behind the garden shed. "Liora, we need to talk about the elephant in the room." I stiffened. "The elephant?" "The wheelchair," he said bluntly. "It's going to draw focus. These photos are important. My boss is here. They'll be on our website." Tamara appeared beside him, sunglasses on even in the shade. "Maybe Meadow could sit on a regular chair, or we put her in the back row," she suggested. She said it lightly, like they weren't talking about erasing a child from the family memory. Before I could respond, the photographer called, "Grandkids first." Meadow spun Violet toward the front row, beaming. Then Francine approached. Pearl necklace, clipped stride, decision already made. "Meadow, sweetheart," she said loudly. "Why don't you be our special helper today? Harrison needs someone to watch the bags." Meadow froze. But, I want to be in the pictures. I decorated Violet for today." Francine smiled with pity, a sharper cruelty than open rejection. "The wheelchair casts shadows. It affects the lighting." Then she looked at me, and Meadow looked at me. Her eyes, my exact green, were wide with confusion and hurt. "Mom," she whispered, "is that true? Does Violet ruin the pictures?" 50 pairs of eyes waited for my answer. My throat closed. I opened my mouth. I should have said no. I should have stepped forward, placed my hands on Meadow's shoulders, and told every adult there that my daughter was not going to be pushed aside like inconvenient furniture. The words were right there, raw, burning, alive. But decades of conditioning wrapped around my throat. Every family expectation, every time I'd been called dramatic or sensitive or too reactive, every reminder that keeping the peace was my job. It all collided with the weight of Roland's career, Tamara's image, and Francine's disapproving stare. And so I did the worst thing I've ever done. I inhaled, my voice cracked. "Just for a few photos, baby," I heard myself say. "Then you'll join the big group picture at the end, okay?" Meadow's face changed slowly, like a cloud pulling over the sun, a quiet, stunned kind of hurt. "But," she whispered, "I decorated Violet for today." "I know," I said, hating myself. "Just for now." Roland nodded in satisfaction. Tamara exhaled in relief. Francine gave a small, approving smile. And Meadow, she wheeled herself away without another word. The grandkids' photo began. All the cousins arranged themselves around the photographer's tripod while Meadow sat 30 feet back at a small wooden bench, hands folded in her lap. She tried to smile when some of the younger kids waved at her, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Harrison clicked away, praising the symmetry, the composition, the balance. "Lovely, all the children, perfect." Except they weren't all there. Except my daughter was watching from the sidelines, taking deep breaths like trying not to cry. Shot after shot followed. Cousins at the dock, cousins in the gazebo, cousins by the willows. "Should we bring Meadow over now?" I asked once. Francine responded smoothly. "We'll do her after the big family shots." Harrison nodded as if it were obvious. Tamara kept checking the camera previews. "These look incredible," she said. "So clean." Clean. I felt sick. At one point, Desiree walked by and placed her purse next to Meadow. "Be careful with the straps," she murmured, as if Meadow had been hired for the role. A few minutes later, a cousin asked, "Why aren't you taking pictures with us?" Meadow forced a smile so tight it hurt to watch. "I'm the helper today," she said. "Grandma said I'm special." The cousin shrugged and ran back to the group. My nails dug into my palms. "I shouldn't have let this happen," I whispered under my breath. But the photos kept going. 3 generations of Brennan women, Harrison announced. Tamara, Desiree, Francine, me, and the other adult female relatives formed a line by the lake. Meadow watched from a distance. When Harrison lifted his camera, I tried to move out of formation. "I'm getting Meadow," I said. Francine grabbed my wrist, lightly, but with authority. There's no time, she snapped softly. We have a schedule. A schedule, one that didn't include my child. By the time the final shot of the day wrapped, the sun had dipped lower, turning the lake golden. Everyone clapped and chatted about how flawless the photos would look. Meadow sat quietly on the bench, staring at her hands. I walked slowly toward her. Sweetheart, I said, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry. She didn't look up. It's okay, she whispered. I know Violet messes things up. My chest constricted. No, she doesn't, honey. But they said it ruins the pictures, she said, still not meeting my eyes. And you didn't say it wasn't true. Those words hit harder than any physical blow. I opened my mouth, but the sound died. Meadow lifted the purse pile gently into her lap as if to prove she'd done her job well. Can we just go inside? She asked softly. I nodded. Inside, dinner was nearly ready. Everyone chatted about angles, lighting, outfit coordination. Roland's voice carried across the room. Harrison said these might be some of the best family shots he's ever taken. Desiree chimed in, I can't wait to post them. Tamara added, these are going to blow up on my page. Pure aesthetic. Pure aesthetic. Pure deceit. When Meadow and I approached the table, she didn't attempt to sit with her cousins. Instead, she slid into a corner seat near the sideboard. During dinner, she barely ate. She pushed peas around with her fork, eyes unfocused. I watched her go silent, smaller. And I watched everyone else pretend not to notice. After dinner, I suggested we go to the dock so she could draw like she'd been planning for weeks. She shook her head. I'm tired, she said. I think I'll just sleep. She never skipped drawing. Never. That night, Meadow fell asleep quickly in the small childhood bedroom we were sharing. Her face turned toward the lake. Moonlight spilled across her purple dress, now wrinkled on the chair. Violet sat beside the bed, decorations dimmed but still glowing faintly. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Every moment of the day replayed behind my eyelids. Every choice I didn't make. Every time I swallowed words that should have been spoken aloud. At 2:14 a.m., unable to breathe under the weight of my guilt, I slipped out of bed and onto the porch. The lake shimmered, quiet in a way that made the whole world feel like it was holding its breath. That's when I noticed it. Meadow's sketchbook, left on the wicker chair, purple fabric cover with her neat handwriting. Brennan Family Memories, 2024. My throat tightened. I picked it up. The first drawing was of Roland's kids by the willow tree. Detailed, delicate, Meadow's talent unmistakable. Except, she drew herself at the very edge of the page, separated by a thick black vertical line. Underneath she wrote, in tiny letters, the special helper. Second drawing, the cousins on the dock. Once again, there she was, alone, behind the black line. Third drawing, fourth, fifth, all the same. Then I reached the last page. It was the big group photo, the finale shot with 41 family members. Meadow had placed herself and several other drawn children with disabilities behind the black line, isolated. Underneath she wrote, the people who ruin pictures. My hands shook, my vision blurred. I sat on the porch floor and sobbed silently, because I didn't want to wake her, but I also couldn't hold the weight anymore. My daughter believed she ruined pictures. Because of us. Because of me. When I could finally breathe again, I stood, walked inside, and grabbed my phone. Roland had already posted previews in the family WhatsApp group. Smiling faces, perfect poses, Meadow nowhere in sight. Tamara reposted them on her Instagram story. I downloaded all 67 photos. Then, for the first time in 6 months, I opened Facebook. My hands trembled as I typed. Deleted. Typed again. Deleted again. Then I looked at the last drawing once more. The people who ruin pictures. No more peacekeeping, no more silence. This was going to end tonight. With steady, deliberate movements, I attached all 67 photos. I wrote a caption, not angry, but honest, devastatingly honest. I tagged every adult in the family, including my mother. The final line read, my daughter didn't ruin these pictures, my family did. My finger hovered over the button. I pressed post, and the quiet lake house didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt like a storm about to break open the sky. The storm hit before sunrise. When I woke, the room was still dark, the sky barely shifting from night to gray blue. I reached for my phone, expecting a few notifications, maybe a handful of comments from friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Instead, the screen refused to turn on. Dead battery. I plugged it in beside the lamp, and as soon as power flowed through the cord, the screen erupted in a seizure of alerts. Vibrations stacked on top of vibrations, one so fast after the other it sounded like the phone was growling. I didn't even open the lock screen. I just stared. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, notification banners rolling down the screen like credits at the end of a movie. Behind me, Meadow stirred softly. "Mom," she mumbled, "why's your phone going crazy?" My heart thudded. She didn't know. She didn't know what I'd done. How the entire world now had access to those 67 photos. I swallowed the fear. "It's probably work," I lied gently. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart." She turned over and pulled the blanket up to her chin. I slipped out of the room. In the kitchen, the morning light glowed pale through the windows. I poured myself a cup of coffee with shaking hands. When I finally unlocked my phone, the first thing I saw was 87 shares. I blinked, refreshed. 102 shares. My breath caught. Comments flooded in. This broke my heart. This family should be ashamed. My daughter is disabled too. Thank you for speaking up. Tag Hutchinson Industries. Where is the mother? How did she allow this? I winced at that last one. They were right to ask. My guilt was already a knife. The share count climbed in real time. Within minutes, it was over 3,000. And then the calls started. Roland called first. I hesitated, then answered. "What did you do?" His voice blasted through the speaker, loud enough that birds outside scattered from the porch rail. "Liora, you take that post down right now." "I won't," I said, trying to stay steady. "They're calling an emergency board meeting at Hutchinson Industries," he yelled. "My boss is already on the line with HR. Website administrators are pulling every page I'm on. You ruined my career." "You ruined your own life the moment you decided my daughter wasn't worth being in the photos," I replied. "You selfish—" I hung up. The phone buzzed again instantly. "Tamara," I answered. "How could you do this to us?" she shrieked. "Do you have any idea what my Instagram looks like right now? My DMs? My business page? I've lost 3 clients since 6 a.m. Jerome's gym members are canceling memberships." "Maybe they don't want to support someone who thinks disabled kids should be hidden," I said coolly. "You're jealous," she snapped. "You've always been jealous." "Of what?" I asked. "Your curated life? Your carefully filtered photos? Your staged perfection? The fact that you bend your entire personality around other people's approval?" Silence. Then, "You're vindictive, Liora. You want us to look like monsters." "You made yourselves look like monsters. I just held up the mirror." I hung up again. The phone vibrated immediately. But this time, it was my mother. I stared at the name Francine Brennan, thumb hovering over the screen. I answered. "Liora." Her voice cracked, something I'd rarely heard. "Mom?" There was a sound I didn't recognize at first. Sobbing. Not the delicate kind you see in movies. The raw, heaving sobs of someone whose world is collapsing. "The school board is reviewing my pension," she choked out. 30 years of service. 30 years of taking care of children. And they're questioning if I discriminated against disabled students. The words stung. "Did you?" I asked quietly. "What?" she whispered. "Did you discriminate, or did you just save that treatment for your granddaughter?" A breathless silence. Her tears stopped for one suspended second. Then she hung up. By noon, the story had made its way onto Twitter, retweeted by disability advocates, teachers, parents, journalists. A viral thread was forming. A family excluded a 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair from 67 reunion photos. Her mother exposed them all. Hashtags emerged. Invisible ableism. Had families. Fail to. Inclusion matters. The share count passed 15,000. At 1:17 p.m., a well-known disability rights activist, Bethany Newcomb, shared my post to her 2.8 million followers. Her caption read, "Ableism often begins at home. Hutchinson Industries employee Roland Brennan and retired principal Francine Brennan excluded a disabled child from every family photo because her wheelchair ruined the aesthetic. Accountability matters." Things exploded after that. My phone vibrated nonstop. I eventually turned off notifications, but the damage, or the truth, was already unleashed. Local news reporters reached out, then regional outlets, then national ones. But the message that shook me came at 4:32 p.m., a voicemail from Mr. Hutchinson. When I called him back, I expected anger. What I heard was exhaustion. "Mrs. Brennan," he began, "I'm appalled, truly." His voice was heavy, older than I remembered from the reunion. "If I had known what was happening at that photo shoot," he continued, "I would have intervened immediately. My nephew has cerebral palsy. He's the heart of our family." I closed my eyes. He sighed. "And I need you to know something." My stomach tightened. "Roland lied to me." I leaned forward on the counter. He told me, Mr. Hutchinson said slowly, that you requested Meadow not be photographed, that you were sensitive about her appearance, that you asked for her to be kept occupied. My blood went cold. He told you I didn't want my daughter in the photos? I whispered. Yes, and I believed him. I didn't want to pry. I see now how deeply wrong that was. I gripped the counter so hard the wood pressed into my palm. Mrs. Brennan, he said, we want to pay for Meadow to have her own professional photo session, with any photographer you choose, and we'd like to feature her art in our company's next diversity campaign. Properly, respectfully, paid, of course. I swallowed. That's very kind, I said quietly. It's the least we can do. After we hung up, I sat there, stunned. All this time, Roland had been manipulating even his own boss, twisting the story to protect his image while sacrificing my daughter's dignity. I had no time to process because the next blow came immediately. A call from an Emmy-winning documentary filmmaker. Maria Santos introduced herself softly. I'm working on a project about ableism within families, she said. A colleague sent me your daughter's drawings. They are heartbreaking, powerful. We want to include Meadow's story, if she's willing. My breath hitched. My daughter? I asked. Yes, her art is remarkable, and her perspective. She paused. It could change people. I didn't answer right away. Everything felt too big, too fast. Millions of eyes watching, thousands of opinions pouring in. And at the center of it all, a 12-year-old girl who had simply wanted to be in the family photo. I'll need to talk to Meadow, I said. Of course. And Liora? Her tone softened. Whatever decision you make, this story matters. After we hung up, I found Meadow in the living room, quietly coloring. She looked up, searching my face with cautious eyes. Mom, did something happen? I knelt beside her. Sweetheart, someone wants to tell your story, a filmmaker. She blinked. A long moment passed. Her fingers curled gently around her colored pencil. Only if they film me in violet, she said at last. And only if I get to say that wheelchairs don't ruin pictures. People's attitudes do. I felt tears prick my eyes. You can say whatever you want, I whispered. She nodded slowly. Then, okay. For the first time since that awful day, her eyes brightened, not with hope in the family, but in herself. And as I watched her turn back to her drawing, a realization settled deep and certain. My daughter was braver than every adult in that reunion combined, and the world was finally listening to her. The days that followed felt unreal, like living inside a storm, while the rest of the world watched from their windows. The morning after the post went viral, reporters appeared at the end of my driveway. I didn't answer the door. I didn't answer the phone. I barely spoke to anyone except Meadow. She had questions, of course, soft ones, careful ones, but I tried to explain everything gently, letting her guide the pace. But the outside world didn't wait for us to process. Not even close. By Monday, the story had made national headlines. By Tuesday, our phones were practically on fire. And the Brennan family, so pristine, so polished, so hungry for public approval, was unraveling at every seam. The documentary team arrived faster than I expected. Maria Santos herself showed up on a humid Wednesday afternoon with a quiet crew of 4. No loud equipment vans, no floodlights, just soft voices, warm hands, and an energy that felt nothing like the scrutiny we'd been drowning in. Maria met Meadow first. She knelt, not to make a show of being at Meadow's level, not with pity, but naturally, gently. And Meadow, who had gone almost silent since the reunion, met her eyes with a seriousness I'd never seen in her. Hi, Meadow, Maria said. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Meadow glanced at me, then at Violet beside her. Do you want to see my drawings? She asked. I would love to, Maria replied. Meadow opened her sketchbook, the same one with the black line drawings, and placed it in Maria's hands. I watched carefully, protective, ready to step in if needed. But Maria handled each page like a fragile truth. These, she whispered, are extraordinary. Meadow didn't smile. She simply said, they hurt. Maria nodded. Yes, and that's why they matter. Filming began that afternoon. They interviewed me on the porch while the lake glittered behind us. Even the breeze felt heavy. I spoke about the reunion, the pressure, the silence I'd chosen, the silence I regretted. Saying it out loud made my throat tighten. I had to pause more than once. Do you think you betrayed her? Maria finally asked softly. The question sliced straight through me. Yes, I forced out. I did. The camera captured every raw second of it. Later, they interviewed Meadow. She sat proudly in violet, her purple wheels glowing under the afternoon sun. Her voice was small but steady. I thought being the helper meant they liked me, she said. But helpers aren't supposed to be apart from everyone. Helpers are supposed to be part of the team. And how did it feel, Maria asked, when you realized you weren't being included? Meadow looked down at her hands. She swallowed, like I was a problem. I almost interrupted. I almost said, no, no, you were never the problem. But Maria raised a gentle hand, urging me to let Meadow speak. And do you think that now? She asked. Meadow lifted her chin. No, she said. I think they were wrong. And I think maybe they didn't know how wrong it was, but they know now. My daughter, 12 years old, was doing what fully grown adults in my family refused to do. Look the truth in the face. Meanwhile, the Brennan downfall was accelerating. Tamara lost 3 more listings in a single week. Her Instagram comments turned brutal. For someone who built her career on image, the backlash tore her open. I heard from a mutual cousin that she'd cried in her car outside a showing and couldn't pull herself together enough to go inside. But what shattered her came from someone much smaller, her daughter Penelope. Penelope refused to FaceTime Meadow the night of the reunion fallout, not out of cruelty, but guilt. And when Tamara finally asked why, Penelope answered in a trembling voice, because if you could do that to Meadow, what would you do to me if something happened and I ended up different? Tamara crumbled. It was the first shift, small but real. A few days later, she texted me a single sentence, I'm sorry. Then another, I didn't understand, I'm trying now. I didn't forgive her immediately, but something in my chest loosened. Roland was a different story. He doubled down, he ranted, he blamed. Screenshots leaked of him complaining in a private group chat, calling the entire situation overblown hysteria and referring to Meadow's wheelchair as a logistical nightmare. The comments spread online faster than wildfire. Hutchinson Industries placed him on unpaid administrative leave. Neighbors stopped talking to him. His wife, Desiree, pulled their kids from a community event because people whispered behind her back. And still, Roland sent me one text. Hope you're happy ruining my life. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I hope you're learning that your life was never more important than your niece's dignity. He didn't respond. My mother, Francine, was quieter. After our last call, she stopped speaking to me entirely. But I heard through relatives that she had resigned from all 4 charity boards she'd served. The Children's Hospital Foundation accepted her resignation with a cold public statement about aligning values with mission. For a woman who lived on reputation, the humiliation must have cut deep. But then something unexpected happened. A former student emailed me, a young man who used a prosthetic leg due to a childhood accident. I saw your post, he wrote, and I want you to know something. Your mother wasn't perfect, but she protected me more than once. Kids teased me, and she shut it down fast. She wasn't always soft, but she wasn't always unkind. The email lingered in my mind for days. People aren't one thing. Francine wasn't purely cruel. She was complicated, flawed, rigid, trapped in her own lifelong obsession with appearances. It didn't excuse what she did to Meadow, but it did widen the lens a little. Filming lasted 3 days. When Maria wrapped, she hugged Meadow and said, "Your voice is going to change someone's life. I hope you know that." Meadow blushed, a real blush this time. After the crew left, the house felt full of echoing silence, like we'd just lived through a small earthquake. That night, while Meadow slept, I sat at the kitchen table scrolling through updates, and then I saw it. Sundance announces new acceptances for documentary shorts. The Special Helper, directed by Maria Santos, selected for premiere. I covered my mouth. My daughter's story was going to Sundance. I checked the calendar. The festival was in just 6 weeks. The thought of facing a crowd, cameras, interviews, questions, it terrified me. But then I looked at Meadow sleeping peacefully in the other room, Violet glowing faintly beside her. She had spoken her truth without flinching. The least I could do was stand beside her on the stage her bravery built. The world was watching us now, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because Meadow wasn't invisible anymore, and neither was the truth. The night before Sundance felt strangely calm. Meadow was in her room at the small lodge the festival assigned to us, practicing her speech in front of the mirror. She'd insisted on wearing a new outfit, a purple dress with small silver stars embroidered along the skirt, matching Violet's freshly polished wheels. She'd chosen the colors herself. "Purple is who I am," she said matter-of-factly. "You shouldn't hide who you are when people are finally looking." I watched her from the doorway, mesmerized. She was steady, composed, a 12-year-old child preparing to speak before filmmakers, journalists, and hundreds of strangers about a wound most adults would have hidden away. She saw me and smiled, small but real. You okay, Mom? I swallowed. I should be asking you that. I'm good. She turned back to the mirror. Are you okay? I wasn't. Not entirely. I felt pride and fear wrestling inside me like two animals, each one vying for control. But Meadow didn't need to carry that weight. I'm getting there, I said softly. You're helping. She wheeled around and looked up at me. That's funny, she whispered, because you helped me first. I didn't correct her. Maybe she was right in ways I hadn't been able to see until now. The Sundance Theater was colder than I expected, maybe from nerves, maybe from the sheer size of the crowd. Violet's wheels sparkled under the stage lights as we rolled in backstage. I held Meadow's hand, feeling the small tremors of excitement in her fingers. Maria greeted us with a tight hug. They're going to love her, she whispered. Just breathe. I nodded. Breathing felt optional, but necessary. When they announced the film, The Special Helper, a hush fell over the audience. Meadow squeezed my hand once, a silent promise, then let go as the lights dimmed. The documentary began. Our faces, our porch, the black line drawings. Meadow's voice saying, "Helpers should be part of the team." Francine appeared briefly, not interviewed, but in footage from the reunion, her posture rigid, her eyes polished. Roland and Tamara appeared in shots too, their silhouettes in the background of group photos where Meadow sat alone in the distance. Watching it all unfold on a massive screen felt like being outside my own body. People gasped when they saw the sketchbook. A few sniffed quietly. One person murmured, "Oh God," at the drawing labeled, "The People Who Ruin Pictures." It lasted only 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the lights rose, applause erupted, loud, long, and full of something more powerful than praise. Recognition, maybe. Accountability, connection. Maria stepped onto the stage and gestured for Meadow. My heart almost stopped. But Meadow didn't hesitate. She rolled forward, violet glowing violet. The crowd quieted. She took the microphone. "My name is Meadow," she said simply, "and wheelchairs don't ruin pictures. People's attitudes do." A ripple of emotion went through the room. She continued, her voice steady and brave. "A family photo is supposed to show who's part of the family. If someone gets left out, then the picture is lying. I don't want to be in pictures where people pretend I don't matter. I want to be in pictures where everyone is included, just like in real life." Silence. Then someone stood, then another, and another. A standing ovation. For Meadow. For Violet. For the truth she dared to tell. When she finished, she turned to me and grinned for the first time in a long, long time. "Can we get ice cream after this?" she whispered. I laughed. "As much as you want." Life didn't magically fix itself after Sundance, but it started to rebuild. Differently, honestly, with better materials. The Michigan Contemporary Art Museum featured Meadow's drawing, "The People Who Ruin Pictures," in an exhibition called Excluded in Plain Sight. It sold for $15,000 to an anonymous buyer who immediately donated it back to the museum for permanent display. Meadow was stunned. She asked me, "Why would someone do that?" "Because your art tells the truth," I said, "and truth belongs somewhere permanent." Roland eventually returned to work, but not to the management track. Hutchinson Industries made disability sensitivity training mandatory for him. He completed 200 hours of sessions. He never apologized, not genuinely, but his behavior softened around Meadow the next time they met. He held open the door for her without being asked. He asked about her art. He didn't say much, but he said something. And sometimes something is the beginning of something else. Tamara changed the most. After Penelope confronted her, she went from reluctant remorse to genuine transformation. She got certified in accessible home design, started visiting homes with ramps, widened doorways, lowered counters. She even began consulting with local families who had children with disabilities. One afternoon, she sent me a picture of her newest listing with the message, "I made sure the photographer captured the ramp beautifully." I cried harder from that than I had from anything else. Francine remained the most complicated. She avoided public statements, but quietly joined a disability advocacy group. She sent Meadow a birthday card with $1,000 for art supplies. She didn't mention the reunion. She didn't apologize. But inside the card she wrote, "For what brings you joy." It wasn't everything, but it was something. And sometimes something is the beginning of something else. As for Meadow, she grew, not just in confidence, but in purpose. Her wheelchair decoration business, Too Bright to Hide, exploded. She sold thousands of violet-colored kits across the country. She included a small card in each package with her sketch of the black line, reworked to show it breaking open, with the words, You belong in every picture. Half the profits went to families who couldn't afford custom decorations or wheelchair accessories. Kids sent us photos from Texas, New York, Chicago, Phoenix, sitting front and center in family portraits, their wheelchairs decorated in colors so bright they looked like celebrations. One mother wrote, "Because of Meadow, my daughter is finally in the middle of our photos, not the edge." I kept a screenshot of Meadow's drawing, the one with the thick black line. Not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because it reminds me of who we became after. The black line didn't disappear, it transformed into a boundary, a promise, a reminder that silence is complicity, and peace without dignity isn't peace at all. People still ask if I regret posting those 67 photos. I don't. Oversharing? Maybe. But sometimes, truth needs a megaphone, especially when a child has been asked to shrink herself for the comfort of others. My daughter isn't the special helper. She's the girl who stood on a stage and told the world that every human being deserves to be visible. Meadow's voice is louder than ever, her art brighter than ever, her future wider than ever. And as for our family, we no longer take perfect pictures. We take honest ones. Violet always in the center, purple wheels gleaming, too bright to hide.